Hey everybody, I'm Theresa Jackson. Thank you so much for joining me in this session about photographic storytelling with Lightroom. I absolutely love teaching this topic, and I think it's because so many of the photographers that I meet, they're not using it. And when I teach them how easy it is, they get so excited about what's possible. I think maybe the confusion comes in with the whole cloud thing, right? If you're using Lightroom Classic, in order to be able to tell stories with your images, you have to share them online, which means you need to make that connection with Lightroom Classic and Lightroom. And I know that can be confusing, but it's really not that hard at all once you understand how to do that. And I'm going to walk you through the steps and make it really easy. We're going to complete two projects, the same project, two different ways in this session. First, I'm going to show you how to tell a story using just Lightroom. I'll use Lightroom Classic and the Lightroom app on my iPad, and we'll also use Lightroom on the web. And then I'm going to show you how to tell the same story even in a more fabulous kind of way using Adobe Spark Page, which I just absolutely love. Spark Page and Lightroom connect directly together, so it's really not much more that you need to learn to use Adobe Spark Page. So let me start off here by explaining the hows and whys to make this cloud connection and why it all works, so that you have a basic understanding of what we're going to do, and then we'll jump into building the project. So you ready? All right, let's go. Lightroom is much bigger than just an application. It's a whole cloud ecosystem service that includes a family of apps. That includes Lightroom Classic. It's part of this ecosystem. Your Creative Cloud subscription provides the access to the sharing service, but to get this to work, the sync has to be turned on because it's not on by default. In this session, I will teach you how to share photos with both the apps, Lightroom Classic and the Lightroom app. I'll use my iPad for Lightroom because it's not a good idea to run both Classic and Lightroom together on the same computer. However, if you have an iPad, you should be running Lightroom on it. Lightroom on the iPad is almost identical to Lightroom on your computer. Before we get into this lesson, I want you to start thinking about stories that you could tell or reasons to share a group of photos. There's great reasons if you're a professional photographer. If you're a professional, you likely photograph events, and those could be parties or all the different sporting events or corporate events. You might be a wedding photographer. You might do portrait sessions. You might do real estate photography. All of these are great reasons to use this sharing storytelling feature. There's lots of reasons to use this for our personal photography too, right? Don't all of us get asked to be the photographer for those family birthday celebrations or holidays, and then afterwards we want to share those images with our family? Well, this is the easiest way there is to do that. And my personal favorite is to create travel logs by sharing my travel photos while I'm traveling directly from Lightroom. Here's what you're going to learn in this session. First, you'll learn how to share a collection of images online directly from Lightroom Classic in 4 simple steps. There's no exporting images or knowing anything about code or anything like that. You will also learn how to share an album of images from the Lightroom app in just 2 steps. I'll show you how to control privacy settings of these shared images. You can control who can view them and whether or not downloads are allowed. The shared albums or collections become web pages. You'll learn how to customize the appearance of these web pages using Lightroom on the web. This includes adding a hero image, changing the image order, adding titles and text blocks, and section breaks. And I'll finish this session by showing you Adobe Spark Page. Spark Page is included with your Creative Cloud subscription, and Lightroom connects directly to it. With Spark Page, you can create visually appealing, dynamic stories with photos and lots of text, and it's super easy to use, and the results are amazing. Now, some of you are using Lightroom Classic and some of you use the Lightroom app. So I'll be demonstrating the sharing workflow with both apps. And we'll start with step 1 from Lightroom Classic. In step 1, you create a collection of images for your story. So let's jump over to Lightroom Classic and take a look at that. I set up a small catalog here to demonstrate with, and I've already created the collection to save time. These are a group of photos from a photo adventure that I went on last New Year's Day, which happens to be my birthday. One of the really cool things about this sharing workflow is that the images in the collection can be any kind of file format. So we can see here in the collections panel that I've created this collection. I titled it Goleta Meadows because that's where this place is called, that all these sculptures. It's out in Borrego Springs. So these images are all from that day, but they're from different cameras and they're different file types. This first one that's selected, for example, is an image that I did some edits in Photoshop. So it's an edited TIFF. We can see that here in the metadata panel in the library module. Some of these images are just straight off the camera. So this is with my Canon. This one over here is a Lightroom HDR. This one here is from my iPhone. And if we scroll down to a little bit later in the day, I switched cameras and I started shooting with my Fuji. So I love this, that all these different types of images can be added and shared together. They can all be put in the same collection and then shared together without any extra work at all. So that's it for step 1 for Lightroom Classic. Now let's jump to Lightroom to see what the first step looks like there. In step 1 with the Lightroom app, we create an album, which is really the same thing as a collection, but they're called albums in Lightroom. So let's jump over to the Lightroom app on my iPad and we'll see a set of images here. These were all captured with my iPhone the last time I was in Carpinteria, California, recording courses for LinkedIn Learning. And what I did is I created an album of my favorite sunset images from that trip. I was treated to the most fabulous sunsets every single night I was there. So I created this album to save time. It's very easy to create an album with the Lightroom app on the computer because you can just create an album and then drag and drop the images into that. So if I tap on all photos, these are all the photos from the trip. And then if I tap on the album, then we see the ones in the album. There's no drag and drop exactly on the iPad. So let me show you how you do that if you're on an iPad, because it's not really that obvious. If I want to add more images to this album, I would tap on the All Photos and then tap on the 3 dots here in the upper right hand corner and then go to Select. So we'll just select this tree, for example. And then at the bottom, it says Add To. And when I go to Add To, then I can select the album and add it. So now we have 26 images in the sunset album. These images were all captured using Lightroom on my phone. And when I did that, they were automatically uploaded to the Lightroom cloud. And if I add any new images here on my iPad, if I tapped on the icon for the pic in the lower left here, that would add photos to Lightroom and they would automatically upload too. And that works the same if you're using Lightroom on your computer or if you're using Lightroom on your phone. Let me select one of these images and then tap on the cloud up here and you'll be able to see it tells us the original DNG is in the cloud backup. What we are seeing on the iPad is just a smart preview. So that's how the Lightroom app works. The important thing to understand here is that all of these images are already in the cloud because I added them using Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic. It works exactly the same way with Lightroom on your computer, on your phone, and on your iPad. Because these images are already in the cloud, they're ready to share now, which is step 2 in Lightroom, sharing the album. To share the album, there's a sharing icon in the upper right-hand corner. I'll tap on that. And it tells us right now that this album is private. So to share it, we need to make it public. Where it says link access, invite only, I'm going to tap on that and I'm going to change it to anyone can view. If you go into this panel the first time and you're not seeing the same thing I am, there'll be an arrow in the upper left-hand corner that you can back out of to get to this page. So now we've created a public link, a public URL. Before we jump out and take a look at what that looks like, let's look at some of the settings here. If we come down to link settings, this is where we can allow for JPEG downloads or not. I like by default that it's turned off, but if I'm sharing some images with my family, for example, from a holiday, I'll usually turn this on, and that way my family members can download the JPEG smart previews from the album that I'm sharing with them. They'll be able to view those images and download those JPEGs so they can have them. So it's good that it's off by default, but it's nice to know that you can turn it on. We have some options here to customize the way this displays, even the appearance of light or dark and what type of photo grid we want. And I'm going to show you all of that with Lightroom on the web. So Lightroom on the web offers even more functionality than we have here in the Lightroom app, but some of these features you can do in both places. So let's tap on this to open Safari, and we'll see what this looks like. So if I was to share this with my family and friends, they can just view this web page and see all of my images. Now this was really easy to do in Lightroom because Lightroom's already part of that ecosystem, right? But Lightroom Classic is not connected to the cloud by default. So it takes a couple extra steps to make that connection. I'll jump back to Lightroom Classic to take a look at how to make that connection. This is step 2 for Lightroom Classic. We have to turn on the sync to connect the catalog to the cloud. We do that with the cloud icon in the upper right hand corner here. So I'll click on that, and there's a button right here that says Start Syncing. I'll click Start Syncing. Now I'm getting this message, and the message is telling me that only one catalog can be synced with the cloud at a time. I'm using a secondary Creative Cloud account for this demonstration, and I use this account a lot to demonstrate this. So I've created previous catalogs in the past that I've synced, and only one can be synced. So it's asking me, do I want to sync this one instead of the older one? You probably won't see this message unless you had previously synced a different catalog. So yes, I want to sync this catalog instead. Now this makes the connection between Lightroom Classic and Lightroom. Nothing happens to the photos in Lightroom Classic when you turn on the sync. I've heard photographers tell me they're afraid to turn this on, thinking that all their photos might start uploading to the cloud. That's not how this works though. The photos that are in Lightroom Classic stay right where they are. Nothing happens to those. But the photos that were already in the cloud, if you have photos in your Lightroom cloud, those are going to start downloading because Lightroom Classic requires that photos live on a hard drive, not in a cloud. And those photos were all in the cloud. When this happens, you'll find a new collection set in your collection panel. We have a new collection set that says from Lightroom. And if I open that up, we'll find the album. Now here in Classic, it's a collection. This is the album of sunsets that I created with Lightroom. It is now part of Lightroom Classic because we turned the sync on and we made this connection. Now we're ready for step 3, which is to sync the collection that we've created here in Lightroom Classic. So we want to sync the Goleta Meadows collection. These are all images in Lightroom Classic. We want to share them. We need to sync them with the cloud. So that's step 3. When we sync this collection with the cloud, it's going to upload smart previews of these images, not the original files. Before we do that, let's take a look at the sort order of the collection because this is important. The sort order that we have here is going to be how they're viewed when we share it with the public. So it's really a good idea to put the images in the order that you want them before you start the sharing. It is possible to rearrange them and change that order after the fact, but I find it's much, much easier if you do it on the front end. So right now, if we look down here in the toolbar, these are sorted in a custom order. I've collected these by similar types of images to tell my story. I'm going to go ahead actually and change this to capture time because I want to show you how you can change it and customize it after the fact, even though it's harder to do. I just want you to know that this is important. If you care about the order of the images, take the time to order them here in Classic using the custom order. Now that we're ready to go, we're going to share this collection, and it's really easy. We just click on this little space right next to the collection. Notice the one that came from Lightroom already has an icon there. So if I click in that space, that's going to sync it. That's the sync icon. This little dash here is the sync icon. And now what's happening is previews are being generated and uploaded to the cloud. If we click on the cloud icon over here, it'll say syncing 180 photos. So those are the 180 photos in this collection. It's smart previews of those photos, not the original ones. There's just one last step. Step 4, we need to make this public so that others can see it. And while we're in the grid view here in the library module, because this has been shared already, not shared, but synced, there's a make public button right here in the upper right hand corner. I'll click on that. It's generating the public URL. Takes a moment. It's creating a website for us right now while it's doing this. Now the URL is generated here. I could just click on this. It'll launch a browser. But I want to open a private window so that a private browser window so that you could see what it looks like for whoever you share it with. So I'll show you another way to do that. If you do a control click or a right click right on the album, you have Lightroom links. What we want to do is copy the public link. So this is the link that you would email to your friends or your family or your clients. So I'll copy that public link and I'll switch over to Safari, and then I'll go to a new private window and I'll paste in that URL, and it'll take us to the public web page, and we'll see here what we would see if our friends and family look at it. Lightroom Classic doesn't offer the same privacy options that Lightroom does, but now that the collection has been synced, we could make those changes back in the Lightroom app or with Lightroom on the web if needed. Let's go back to Lightroom on my iPad and take a look at it there. You could do the same thing with Lightroom on your phone. Back here in Lightroom, the collection from Lightroom Classic is now an album in Lightroom because we synced it. And notice it shows that it's shared already because we made it public. If we want to make further changes to it, we could go to the sharing icon in the upper right hand corner. And right here where it says link access, if we want to limit who can view this, we would change it to invite only and then send emails to invite viewers to take a look at it. So all the other settings are available here as well. We can allow for JPEGs if this is going to our family, for example. Everything that I'm doing here with my iPad, you can also do on your phone. Next, we're going to switch over to Lightroom on the web, where I'll show you how you can really customize the display of this to really tell your story. Lightroom on the web is found at the URL lightroom.adobe.com. When you sign in with your Creative Cloud login here, you're looking at the cloud contents of your Lightroom library. This is the private view of my Lightroom cloud. It's not the public view of the shared albums. Lightroom on the web looks and feels very much like the Lightroom app, but it even has a few additional features. Here's where we can really customize how our story is going to view. So we have some icons at the bottom. These are how we're viewing it in this private view, this view versus the square view. The third icon over is how you edit it and then how it will be viewed for your fans. So as soon as I click on that painter icon, we get a new panel that pops up here. These icons control how your viewer is going to view it. So these icons down on the lower left are how you're viewing it in the private view. These in here are how you're editing the display. I like this first one the best. It's actually responsive, so the grid is going to change depending on the size of the screen it's viewed on. Then we can change it to the light, so you have the light or dark appearance. I like the light appearance. Let's open this up because there's even more functions here. We see that this is sorted by the capture date. This is really odd because it doesn't give us a custom order here. So it gets really confusing. If we switch back out to here, we have a custom order. Let's see if we do that. And then we come in here. It's still in the capture date. So this is what I was saying. It gets really clunky. But you can drag and drop them to rearrange them when you're in this view here on Lightroom on the web. So let's take this selfie picture here and try and drag it over. And we'll put it in the first position so that we can see that we've obviously made a change. Now, this is easier to do with the Lightroom app on your iPad or on your phone or on your computer. It's really clunky in the web, but it does work. There's more ways that we can edit this here. Let's take a look at those. Notice that it's showing the title and the author. Those are appearing up here. These are coming directly from Lightroom Classic. I could change it. I could change the title, for example. I could just take, actually, I don't want to change it. It's good the way it is. I could hide it if we don't want to see the title, or I could hide the author if I wanted. But this is really cool here. We can create a cover image, but before I turn this on, let's pick a cover image. And to do that is in the upper left-hand corner where the title is, and we see the pencil icon. We can choose something from here, maybe this just desert scene, and this will now become our cover image. So we'll turn on, use the cover image. It's either in the background, the way it is right now, it's real faint in the background, or we can create a hero image, which I like. That puts a nice big image at the top of the page. Other things that we can do is add section breaks with text. If you click right in here where it says edit, it creates this new section. So I'm going to call this New Year's Day because that's when this was. And then the second section that is the subhead, you can actually use this like body copy. I've copied some text to my clipboard and I'll paste it in here, and then I'll go ahead and say done. So now we're starting to build our web page. I could come in here and add a section break. Notice as I hover over here, we get the blue lines. And every time you add a section break, you can add some more copy. So I don't have any more copy here. I'll just type something in so that you could see what that looks like. If I don't put a subhead in, then we just get some title text. So you can see here with Lightroom on the web, you can build a complete web page for your photographic story. It's really pretty incredible. I've already finished this. I'm going to show you what it looks like done. But before I do that, let's look at what this looks like as a work in progress. If we go to the sharing icon in the upper right hand corner, we'll find that link. If I click on that link, it's going to take us to the page. And this is what it looks like with just a quick couple little edits that I did. Let's take a look at what the finished page can look like with a little time put into it. I've got the finished one copied to my clipboard, so I'll paste the URL in here so we can take a look at that. This took me a little bit of time to edit. Notice I repositioned the cover image. That's one thing you can do. If you click on it, you can drag it around and reposition it. And then I used just a single image here at the top, and I added a bunch of section breaks, and I divided up my story based on the way I wanted to tell the story. Instead of being chronological, I told the story in sections of images that I felt went together really well. Isn't this incredible? A complete story with photos and text completely created from Lightroom. And this is what your viewers will see when you share that link with them. There's a couple other really cool things here too. Is they could go into a slideshow view with this triangle in the upper right hand corner. If we click on that, it takes us into the slideshow and we could go through all the images. A couple other things. If you select one of these images, there is the ability here to add comments or to add a heart to like it. Now, your viewer is going to need to have an account. It doesn't have to be an Adobe account, but some kind of account, so that they can leave a comment. And that comment's going to show back up in Lightroom Classic. So this is awesome if you're a professional photographer and you're, say, sharing a portrait session. Your clients can come in here and comment on the ones that they like, that are their favorite. Next, I want to show you what is possible with Spark Page, because if you think this is cool, you might just be blown away by Spark Page. It offers many more options and it's incredibly easy to use. Spark Page is available as a mobile app for your phone or your iPad. I love using it on my iPad, but it also works in a browser. And since I'm already here in Safari with the browser, let's just go to the Spark website and create a Spark page there. So to go to the Spark website, it's spark.adobe.com, but it helps if you spell correctly. All right, at the Spark website, there's several different Sparks. There's Spark Post, there's Spark Page, and there's Spark Video. We're going to click the Start Now button. And down below here, we'll see some of my other projects that I've created. To start a new one, we'll click on the plus, and we're going to create a web page, which is a Spark page. Now it takes a moment to load this. And the first thing we want to do is add a cover image. When I click on photo here, we see Lightroom. So it has a direct connection to the images that we have in Lightroom. And when I click on Lightroom, we'll see the two albums that I have, Carpinteria Sunsets and Goleta Meadows. Well, when I use Spark Page to create a story, I like to really think about the story as having chapters, and I divide my images up. The way that you saw with the story that I told with the Lightroom web page. It's even easier with Spark Page if you divide those images up into individual collections, because we have access to the individual collections here. So let's jump over to Lightroom Classic. I've already got those collections set up, but I need to sync them so that they'll be available here. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of this, and I'll switch back to Lightroom Classic. Okay, here in Lightroom Classic, I have a collection set. And inside of that collection set, I have all the collections for the chapters of my story. So I'm just going down the list here and clicking that little sync icon so that these images will be available in my Lightroom Cloud so that I can create a story using Spark Page. It takes a moment or so for these all to get uploaded. If we look in the cloud icon over here, it shows that it's syncing those photos, and it's syncing one collection at a time. So we'll give that a moment, and then we'll switch back over to Safari and build the Spark Page. All right, those images have finished syncing, so we're ready to start building our story. I'll click on the photo icon here and then click on Lightroom. And now we see those collections that I just synced from Lightroom Classic. We'll start with the pre-dawn images for this story, and I'll select this image for the cover. That takes a moment to load, and then we can add a title and a subtitle. So this was on January 1st. And I'll go ahead and make that the title of my story, January 1st, 2021. And then it was Goleta Meadows, Borrego Springs, which I'll make the subtitle. But I'll copy and paste that because you don't really want to watch me typing, do you? All right, that looks great. Now we're ready to scroll down and start building our story out. Right away, these icons pop up, giving us some options of how we can build this story. I'm going to start this with some text. So I'll click on the text, and notice that we have H1 tags here as well. So let's create a section title with an H1 tag. We'll call this New Year's birthday because it's my birthday on New Year's Day. And then we'll add some body copy below that. I've already written this out. I'm going to copy it and paste it again because you don't really want to watch me typing. I can't type and talk at the same time anyway. So I click on the plus icon, and every time you see a plus icon, there's some options there. Click on that. We have all these options. We can add buttons to our pages. We can add videos to our pages. We have different ways of displaying our images, and I'm going to show you a few of those here. Right now, let's just add a little bit more text. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste this text in here, and notice that each paragraph becomes its own section. And next, we're going to add a photo. So we'll click on the plus again, and we'll click the photo option. We're back in the same collection, which is great. We want to start with this giant sloth. We'll import that selected image. Now we have ways to format this. There's so much you can do with Spark Page. It's really powerful and really easy to use, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and make this full width, and then I can add a caption to the bottom of it as well. If I scroll just right, we see add a caption. So I have a caption that I'll copy and paste in here. Select this caption area. Notice we can even format the caption. So we'll place that in there, and then just keep scrolling down. We get another plus, and this time we'll add more text and we'll add some body copy. So let me grab my body copy here and just paste that in there. And we'll just keep going down the page to see what we get. Let's preview what we've created so far so you can see how wonderful this is. If we click the preview button here at the top, this is what it looks like when you share it. So it's just one long web page with this parallax, and it's so beautiful. Now get out of the preview. We'll click the X. And let's add a few more because I want to show you some of the really awesome features when you use some of the different styles for the way that you work with photos. I added this body copy here, but I realized I forgot to put the title in. I've thought about how to tell my story in these different chapter sections, and I'm going to create a title or H1 text for each of those. So this first section is titled Pre-Dawn. So I just clicked on the plus. It's really easy to go back and insert things that you missed. We'll tag this H1 so that we get nice big text, and we'll call that Pre-Dawn. And then we're ready to go down and add some more photos. Now I want to add all the rest of the photos from the Pre-Dawn collection. I'll click on the plus because I want to add those photos below the body copy. And this time I want to show you how to create a glide show. This thing is just amazing. It's so easy to do. So I'm going to select glide show, and that takes us back to where we were finding our images. And I want to select all the ones that I haven't used yet. So let's select all of these. I'll select that one too. The order that I select them is the way they're going to come into this glide show. I'll click on import selected, and notice that it's loading all of those in the order that I selected them. Oh, it made a liar out of me. It went in the order from the bottom to the top. But we can change that. Actually, it didn't go in that order either, but we can change that here. If I click on an image, we get these icons to move it down. It says move forward, but I'm moving it down to the list. That's the way I think of it. So we'll put this one at the bottom. And we could do that with any of these images. We could replace it with a different photo, or we can delete them, and we can change the position. After I'm happy with the order of this glide show, I'll click on save. This takes us back to the editing of the page, and if I scroll up, we can see how this just inserted the images below where the text was. And as I keep scrolling down the page, we see this field come in here. We can add more content to this. If I leave it blank, it won't show up. If I put something in here, it will. So I'm going to add some text here. So click on the plus, see the text. I'll paste my text in, and then I'll go continue to scroll, and you'll see that these images just fade into each other. Glide shows are so beautiful, and they're so easy to create. I'm going to go ahead and scroll all the way to the bottom of this one. Actually, I want to find this one here. Notice it was a vertical image inside of a horizontal. So we're seeing the top of the head cropped off. Well, if I click on it, if I click on the image, I can add a focal point. So we'll go into the focal point and we'll drag the focal point up to the head and then save that. So now as this image fades in, we see the top of it. So you have a lot of control here. We'll go through all these images and then we'll keep building our story out, and we'll go to the second section here, which I call the habitat. So I'm going to say text and put in the H1 text, and we'll call this the habitat of these sculptures that are out there in Borrego Springs. And we'll add some body copy for this. So I'll copy and paste that again so that you don't have to watch me type. We'll paste that in, and now we'll add some more photos. I want to show you just a couple more ways that you can add photos to this. The way that you add the photos and the order that you do them create different types of effects when the page is published and your viewers look at it. So we'll go ahead and click on the plus, and this time I'll choose photo. And now we want to go to the next collection, right? We're in the second section. So I'm going to back out of the pre-dawn collection by clicking on Lightroom Photos. And this one was the habitat. And this one, I want to pick this sloth image where he's really far in the distance. This one here. We'll choose that. We'll import it. And then I'm going to change this to fill the screen. So full width, no, fill screen. We'll fill the entire screen with it. Again, we could put a caption here. If I don't put a caption here, then that block won't show up. We can change the focal point. Oh, we can move this focal point in here. And then let's keep scrolling down and let's add another photo. I have another image of that giant sloth where I was just a little bit closer to it. So let's choose that one. And again, we'll add this one at fill screen and set the focal point and then save it. And then we'll scroll down and we'll add a few more. Let's do photo again, and I'll choose this one that has a couple sloths off in the distance, and we'll import that. And this time we'll set this one to in a window. These are really cool. You get this parallax when you say put them in a window. See how we scroll through that there? Again, there's a caption. If I don't use the caption, if I don't put anything in there, then nothing's going to show. Let's add another one. It's really cool when you overlap these images like this and you put them in these windows or these frames that scroll by. I'll use this image of the elephants here. We'll import that one. And again, we'll put this one in a window. Takes a moment to load that. Now, as I scroll through this, we can see something pretty interesting is happening. But when we preview this, it looks even more amazing. So let's go do that. Let's go to preview. Takes a moment to load out all those images. And wow, look at that. So let's go back up to the top. So there's our cover. We're telling our story. We have a little caption on that image that fills the screen. We have a section, like I think of them as chapters. So the pre-dawn section, some images and some text here. And this is the glide show where they're all fading into each other. I just love this. And now we're going to the next chapter that I called the habitat. Oh, I misspelled that. I'll have to go back and fix that. It's not the habit. See, I'd said it's very hard to type and talk at the same time. So a little bit of copy. Now look at how cool this is. So this one was in to fill screen, and the next one was in to fill screen. And look at how it has that feeling of zooming in on the image by putting those two images over each other. And these three images were added using the window feature. It's just so amazing. So we could just keep going, building this out. I clicked on the X to get out of there, so we go back into the edit. Let me go back and fixed my text here and spell habitat the correct way. Okay, much better. Now we can continue to build this out. There's one more type of image that I want to show you, and that's the grid. Before I add the grid of images, I want to add a little bit more copy. So I'll click on the T for text. I'll paste my copy in here, and then I'll click on the plus to add the grid of images. So we have the option here, photo grid. I'll choose that. That's going to take us back to the collection we were in. And I want to select all of the images here that I haven't yet used, which is most of them. Let's see. We use these 3 and we use the elephants. So we'll select all of the rest. And then when I click import selected, it's going to automatically arrange these images in a grid that works really well. And I find the grids are beautiful when you have an assortment of vertical and horizontal. See, then you get something like this, which is really nice. When they're all horizontal, it looks a little bit more static. Now you can change the order of these. You can't change the way the images crop or fit. So they're all being cropped a little bit and then fit within this grid, but you can change the order. And when you rearrange them, it's going to reflow it. Let's see. We'll move this to the right. Notice now this image is large and this is small. So I usually go in here and just move these around until I'm happy with the way it looks. Sometimes you just got to play. If there's an image that maybe you don't want to keep, you can delete it at this point. You could take an image that's a really particularly nice one. Let's take this one here, and you can make it a large photo so it fills the whole thing, and then you have a grid above it and a grid below it. Then we'll click save, and we'll see how that grid was added to our story. We could even add a caption to this grid if we wanted. So we've been working on this story. It's not quite done. I would take a long time to finish it. There's almost 200 images. I do have a finished one that I want to jump out and show you. But before I do that, there's one more thing that I haven't shown you yet, and that's called themes. Notice, remember, our text had styles applied to it, and because it had styles applied to it, we could change the theme and it'll automatically change the way the whole thing looks. So in the upper right hand corner are themes, and just choosing, let's go to nightcap just because it'll give it a very different look. So it's basically rebuilding this page with a different style sheet. So now we have it on the dark background. Also, the font's changed. Let's go up to what our H1 text look like. Let's go to the whimsy and take a look at that. So we have a completely different look. If you use Spark on the web like we're doing here, and you have the full paid version, which you have with your Creative Cloud subscription, you could build your own custom theme. See where it says add your brand here? So you can use your own fonts and your own colors and your own text styling and completely customize these pages. Let's see what this looks like when we preview it with this storybook theme. I'll go back up to the top here. So even the title page looks a little bit different. Pretty darn amazing. It looks like I've got, super web coding skills. I have none of them. I'm a photographer. That's why I love Adobe Spark Page, because it makes me look good and smart. When you finish building your page, you're going to want to publish it so that others can see it. So let me show you how to do that, and then I'll finish by showing you what this finished page looked like. I need to exit out of the preview. We can barely see that X in the upper right hand corner. And then at the top, we have the sharing icon. So we'll click on that, and then I'm not going to publish this because it's a work in progress. I've already created and published this story using my other Creative Cloud account, so I'm going to share that with you. But this is how you would do it. You have to click on the publish and share link, and that's going to generate a public URL that and you can then share on social media or email to people. You can even get embed code that you can take and embed the Spark page into your own website. Pretty awesome. So let's take a look at what this looked like when I finished it. I'll paste the link for that in the browser window here, and that'll open up the public view. Sometimes if there's a lot of images, they take a little bit to load, but once it's fully loaded, it's a pretty seamless way to view it. So I had created a custom brand with my fonts and my style, so we can see this looks a little bit different. So those are how I styled my H1 tags in my custom brand. And then as we scroll through this, we have the pre-dawn chapter with some copy and a little bit of text on that image. Remember, this is the glide show. I put text on a few of these. So I'm just scrolling down the page, and in this glide show, these images are fading into each other. Some of them have copy, some of them don't. Now we're going into chapter 2, the habitat. When we put this image in using the fill screen, and then the image that comes in on top of that also used the fill screen, and then these next two images used the window option. So a little bit more copy, and then the grid. Notice this grid has a little bit of a drop shadow. That's part of the styling that you can set up when you create your brand. Another full image, more grids of images, and another chapter. This one all about the serpentine dragon, which is a really, really incredible sculpture that goes all the way across the street. The tail crosses the street. So fantastic. I love, love, love this ability to tell stories with my images, because most of the time when I'm out taking pictures, I'm taking a whole set of images, and I usually want to show more than just one photo. And Spark Page is the best way I know how to do that. I've told a lot of photographic stories using Spark Page. A few years ago, my husband and I traveled to Italy, and we created a travelogue of each day of our journey using Lightroom and Adobe Spark Page mobile apps on my iPad. It was such a seamless workflow. I collected all the images together and put them in the page, and then he wrote the copy. We had so much fun doing that. For 5 years running now, I've done a year in review Spark Page every January to recap the things that I did personally and professionally from the year before. And it's just a great way to go through all the images that I took, some of which I really hadn't had taken the time to really look at. So putting them together in a story gave me that opportunity to go back through them. So I hope you think of some ways that you can tell stories as well with your photos. You can follow up with me. I have 2 courses on LinkedIn Learning that cover a lot of these same topics. One is called Learning the Lightroom Ecosystem, and the other one is Lightroom Social Sharing. You can also follow up with me at my website, orchardviewcolor.com. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope this session inspired you to create your own stories, and if you do, please share them with me.